Welcome to Paul Champlina's Talking Property channel. Paul Champlina here. I am privileged to have Jeremy Leaf, the Don of estate agents. Pleasure to have you here.
Lovely to see you, Paul, again.
Again, we meet. Jeremy, just for the viewers, tell our audience who you are, what you do, how long you've been in the industry.
Oh, don't.
You are a veteran.
You make me sound too old, Paul.
No, you don't look a day over 40.
Thank you, darling.
Yeah. Makeup?
Well, I've been in the business, several decades, put it that way. But I'm still working 7 days a week, which is keeping me young, like you. I love the business. I don't know, I started in the mid-80s with my agency in Finchley.
Down the road. And we've got some others as well now. But more than that, I'm still involved with that, the agency sales and lettings. But we get involved a lot in investment development work as well. Yeah,
all over.
I've seen your boards.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a couple of things in Birmingham at the moment.
Oh wow!
Things in Kent and Essex and Hertfordshire. So we sort of spread our wings a little bit. But nearly every day I will go into the office.
Brilliant.
I will hear what's going on. I like to go in at the weekend as well.
Right.
Because then we're seeing punters coming into the office and I get a sense of what's really happening out there. And it's not just sales and lettings, it's investment development, what the developers, the investors, they're actually quite an important part of the market because, of course, what they decide to do maybe in 18 months or 2 years is going to affect things happening now.
A fantastic segue. Developers, planning, estate agency, first-time buyers. That's really what I really want to get the insight of you being here. So let's just talk about developments. You know, I've driven around and I'm a local North London boy and I've seen a lot of your boards up and developments and stuff like that. Now, the appetite with regard to developers, I mean, obviously the market's changed. We've got a new government. They're going to relax planning, which we hope is going to happen. And there's a whole lot of stuff going on. What's the feeling out there, especially with regard, you work with smaller developers. What's the feeling on the ground? Are they land banking? Are they going ahead? Are materials more expensive? What the lending rates?
Well, we actually deal with across the board. We're dealing with some of the big names, the top 5, 10, as well as a lot of the smaller ones.
Wow.
It is changed. The dynamic is changing, Paul, in that Labour coming in and a lot of our customers have always said in the past, because I've been in the business for a few years, as you said, often people say, I don't vote Labour, but Labour's better for my business because they're more pro-building. And a lot of the clients, developers and investors are thinking, right, now is a good time to look at it because Labour are pro-building. But it varies between boroughs. Some of the boroughs, particularly, funny enough, I had a call recently about this. Some of the boroughs where the local plan is relatively immature, or that there isn't the windfall opportunities, what they say, like the big blocks, and particularly in Barnet, which is one of the areas we work in. They've got a lot of areas where there's big blocks of flats going out, you know as well.
Yeah.
So the appetite is not so great, although they're good at passing planning, that means. So it varies. Some other boroughs, like Hertfordshire, where we are now, if I can say that, their plan is not quite so developed. And I think that there are opportunities for some people there to look at developments which before they weren't there, but because of the Labour parties or the Labour government's stance and attitude towards planning, I think we might see more developments in those areas, which is good. We want to see activity. We want to see more building, people coming in and out of the market.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, the reality is that, Angela Rayner has said that they will come down hard. They were her words on councils that won't obviously try and meet their quota. I mean, can you see that happening?
Well, it's a very good question, Paul, because, talk is cheap. We've seen it all before.
Yeah.
Time and time again. At least they're recognising the problem.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I would like to see is more apolitical or non-political
joined up
thinking, because actually now, for the first time for a long time, we're seeing that Conservatives and Labour and even Liberal Dems and whatever saying much the same thing. There's a huge shortage of affordable housing to rent and to buy, particularly social housing. We'd like to see that, because then that would give the continuity and the confidence of the developers, small and large, to take on debt and to say, right, they're pro-building. We want to see things. So I think it's going to take a little while to see on the ground, is it really different from how it was 6 months ago, a year ago? Are planning applications being more quickly dealt with? Are they helping?
Have they got
builders?
enough planners though? That's the problem, isn't it?
And again, a good one. There isn't enough. I think that's where it starts, because there's also a lot of talk about, and I've seen it on the ground myself, a lack of builders, a lack of bricklayers. I know it's a big headline.
We need
whatever.
20,000 bricklayers.
You read it. You read the same story.
Well, no, I did an interview on. I think it was on Talk with Mike Graham, talking about planning and the new towns. There's 100 applications for new towns.
Correct.
I mean, the new towns is going to be part of that brief, isn't it?
Yeah, but how long does it take to get a new town? What
And
about the planning, the
Massive.
infrastructure, the roads?
It's great in principle.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think our viewers really want to know, which I mean, and I want to know, and we can't see it happening. I mean, we've been in various programs together over the course of time. Every government term and said we need 300,000 properties a year, and all that type of stuff. And you need, obviously, just trying to get a builder to give you a quote round your house is hard enough, isn't it? 1.5 million properties or units, whatever you want to call, in 5 years. That's a pipe dream, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. But the way I look at it, and I hope they take a similar stance, is it's not just about building new homes. It's making it easier to bring empties and underused properties into use, because that is a new home as well. And actually, it's on brownfield or refurbishment conversion. That is the low-hanging fruit, and that's where they've got to be aiming for. It's not just about building, because that takes a lot longer to come to pass.
And the Transport for London, I mean, Sadiq Khan, and he was coming out with all these quotes, whatever, they're saying about a lot of those sites, they want to be bought out and build on those, don't they?
Yeah, they have mentioned that. But, you and I follow the figures forensically, all the housing market figures. We do every day. There's always something new that comes up. And we put together a picture of how's the market in answer to the question we're asked all day, every day, how's the market? And that is just one of the things. We want to see those planning applications going up.
Yeah.
We want to see the time taken for them to be done. Then we could say you might be getting closer to those aspirational targets.
You've got to start and you've got to have the appetite. And I think, that some of the positive stuff coming out of this government when it comes to property has been that planning commitment. So
Definitely.
we touched wood on that. Tell me about what it's like on the ground with regard to Jeremy Leaf, with regard to inquiries, with regard to sales at the moment. What's the market like?
Right. Well, again, it's very hard to get real good data out there in terms of what you read, and it's very hard for buyers and sellers to know actually what's going on. What we found and what we're seeing all over, that demand for houses is actually pretty good. Demand for flats is not so good.
Right.
There's too many of them. People are nervous about flats.
Leasehold,
cost, and certainly landlords have become a bit of an endangered species in terms of buying new properties because of Renters' Rights Bill, which I'm sure you've spoken about many times and are still speaking about it. So that's changed the dynamics of the market, and a lot more has come on the market, and we're finding that because they've got much more choice, buyers also seeing the not great publicity about cladding, about neighbour disputes, about service charges. Sellers of flats have got to be a bit more smart. They've got to stand out from the crowd.
Right.
And they've got to differentiate.
And how do they do that?
Well, obviously price is very important.
Yeah.
Maybe they've got to ring fence the service charges. Maybe they've got to go out there and say, haven't got a cladding issue, or it's being dealt with. Or be very much more proactive in terms of the way they market the property.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And what about first-time buyers? Because obviously this channel, we want to get a lot of content out for first-time buyers. With regard to affordability, how are you seeing that with first-time buyers coming? I mean, obviously it's really hard in London because obviously, the prices have skyrocketed. But what are you seeing with regard to first-time buyers?
Another bit of an endangered species in certain lots of parts of London. Nearly all the first-time buyers are getting help from a bank of mum and dad, or mum and grandpa, because it is so hard for them to get that.
Well, what's the average deposit in London? Isn't it like 130 grand or something
ridiculous?
Something mental like that.
Something ridiculous. It's really, really hard. But fortunately, people who are a little bit older, grandparents, sometimes they've got equity, and they're thinking there's no point in me leaving it to you when you don't need it. And they're saying, well,
and you'll get smashed on tax, inheritance tax.
Exactly. So some are able to, when they are in a position to help, they're trying to help, and we are seeing more of that.
And on first-time buyers, what about the schemes of the shared ownership and Help to Buy? What's happening with those schemes?
Well, the Help to Buy sadly has ended.
Yeah.
And I think I read somewhere recently, you probably read it as well. It's the first time that there's actually no help for first-time buyers.
Is it really?
I mean, there are lifetime ISAs, there's a mortgage guarantee scheme.
Yeah.
There are a few bits, but
And longer mortgage periods.
Longer mortgage periods. The lenders are being a little bit more flexible, but there's very little help out there, which on the other hand, you can say it is a subsidy. It does buck the market, and it makes it, by giving Help to Buy, it actually might help the people in this generation or this element, but it makes it harder for those coming up behind.
Do you know what? You've read more segue-wise, you're such a pro at this. So I was talking about, with regard to the feeling of first-time buyers, and if I took my landlord cap on, because obviously landlords are exiting, and there's this myth that lots of first-time buyers are going to buy those properties. London is a completely different market to the rest of the country.
Correct, yeah.
With affordability. How are you finding? Do you see? Have you had a lot of inquiries where tenants are saying, "I want to buy that property"?
I think it's more out of London.
It's out of London because of the affordability.
Yeah. It's the affordability issue. I think some are where you see what's pushing them to make those decisions, as you touched on before, is because the rents have gone up so high, skyrocketing. They're thinking to themselves, well, I'm paying all this money in rent. It's dead money. It's money down the drain. I've got nothing for it. It made more of a difference when prices were rising more quickly because, of course, they were getting further and further behind the chance of buying a property further down the track. But even now, a lot of people look at it as dead money and they think, well, I can pay almost as much on a mortgage as I am paying a rent. I might as well buy that.
But they need a deposit, which is the big thing. Yeah. I think about my kids. My kids are 18 and 14, and and you think people older. It's become a real pipe dream for someone to own their property now. What's the answer?
Well, there isn't. If we look back, hindsight is a wonderful thing. We look back, we think of those days. Oh, why not buy a few more of those flats? Because nobody really knows. But the answer is probably things are going to go up. But I don't think they're going to go up for the foreseeable future. We don't see it. But if we were having this chat when you were buying, then we might have said, oh, they'll never go up. They're much the same.
Yeah.
So who really knows? All you can do is make decisions on what you see here and now today.
Yeah, it's true. It is. It's at the time. I remember when I paid 40 grand for this flat, and then I was starting my business. I was skint at the time. I had to rent it out, and then in 2000. No, it was 2000. I sold it in 2000 because I thought the market was going to turn. Obviously, it went up. Then there was 2001, obviously, with what happened in America and stuff. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to spend all this money, end up buying another property. But that was 25 years ago.
Wow.
And look, the reality now with tenants, we touched on tenants, and obviously you do rentals at Jeremy Leaf. Tenants are paying 35 to 40% of their wages towards rent. We just heard about energy prices going up. So, how, in this day and age as a renter, it's hard enough actually to find a property. We had Steve Wayne on before from Benjamin Stevens, and he was saying that he's just so many applicants fighting over one property. Do you have that with regards to inquiries for
rental property,
for rentals,
or to sales?
For rentals,
we did have it. The rental market has definitely levelled off.
Right.
I think there was a ceiling, an affordability ceiling for a lot of tenants. The rent just went up too far and too fast. And a lot of people were coming back and saying, look, guys, we just cannot afford it. In fact, we were making more, the rents were going up higher on renewals than they were for new lets.
Because they're putting the rents up, yeah.
Because a lot of people weren't aware, being in the marketplace, that rents had actually dropped or softened, as the agents like to say it, to try and hide what's really happening. Sorry, agents.
Yeah.
Definitely that is a factor. There is still a shortage of property to rent, and I think it's probably going to get worse, for the reasons as well with the Renters' Rights Bill and so on. Because we're not actually seeing all of our landlords or a lot of our landlords leaving in droves just yet, but they might do when the bill becomes law.
Yeah.
But either way, there's a shortage, but there isn't quite the shortage that there was maybe 6 months ago.
Right,
we are finding now properties are staying on the market longer.
Are they?
They are taking longer.
Is it because the rents are still too high? Or
I
have
think
landlords brought the rents down?
a little bit of both
Yeah.
of that. But the other thing is which has changed. The other bigger change, is that landlords, because of the Renters' Rights Bill, if they're going to stay on board, even if there might be a gradual period within which the law takes effect, they're saying, right, we want much better tenants, which is going to happen anyway.
And you will get good quality.
So they're saying, okay, I've
better.
got 4 or 5 offers. In the past, I might have taken him, her, or whatever, or them.
I can
I'm not gonna
qualify
do that
better.
Now I've got to qualify better.
And what's got to happen is, going forward, landlords are going to take rent guarantee insurance out.
100%.
They've got to get a rent. There's a company called rentguarantor.com. They're really good. They do guarantors for, and I think that's really important. Let me ask you this. Coming back to the estate agency, the perception of estate agents, right? And I want you to be brutal, because you've been president of trade bodies and so forth. There's good guys, there's bad guys, okay? A fact, I don't know if you know this fact, I'll give you a fact. Fact, in the bottom 5 professions out there, estate agents is, I think, 3rd or 4th bottom. Estate
What's lower, politicians or journalists?
Politicians, traffic wardens, bankers, and I think bailiffs. I was a bailiff.
Okay.
You're in that mix.
Okay.
So well done. Tell me, how can estate agents change the perception of how they act? Because I think, people, you're an estate agent, how and that must frustrate you, because you're a professional estate agent, you've represented the body, the industry at the highest level. How do you change the perception?
It's very, very hard. It's like perception of any industry. Like as you said, politician or journalist or whatever, you have to try that much harder to prove you're not living up to your reputation, which is good in a way, because on lettings you show your knowledge and experience with the law and regulation, and you have to prove your worth. And I think with sales you have to prove that you're actually looking out for buyers and sellers. Of course, you're paid by the seller, usually, not always, but usually. But if you're not upfront with the buyer and you're not transparent, and
that's
telling them
problem,
what it is,
isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a big problem.
Transparency
and certainty, and coming back to them when you're supposed to. You think, cool, this guy's a bit different, or this lady's a bit different. They really are worth doing it, and it's building that trust. But because of the reputational issues, like there's bad apples in every barrel, Paul.
Yeah.
Because of those reputational issues,
Yeah.
it takes more to get over it.
And reputation's everything, as we work now.
100%,
And we work really hard at reputation. So I want to sell my property. I'm in Finchley. I know.
Come on down.
I know all the usual suspects. Okay. What should I be looking for to find the right estate agent to take my instruction on? Yeah, you could come in cheaper with fees of 1% instead of 1.5%, or whatever it may be. That's the standard, because obviously people are driven by cost. It's a bit different maybe if you're a landlord, because obviously there's a bigger fee obviously you sell the property. But what for the consumer out there looking to sell, what's the 3 or 4 things they should be looking at to get that really good agent?
Yeah, again, it's a good point. I mean, often a first-time seller, like a first-time buyer, is I wouldn't say naive, but not as experienced, and they will often not value the agent service as much as, say, a second-time or third-time seller, because they've had experience of good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
But irrespective of that, it's not just. I'd like to think it's not just about price and commission, because if you're going to an agent who's going to overprice your property, you're almost certainly going to be ending up with lower than it's actually worth. What the true value is.
But that's part of the problem, isn't it? To gain the instruction,
right?
It's like the rental. I'm going to say it's worth that, so I can get the instruction.
100%. So when you're given advice, I would say to the agent, would you mind showing me why you justify that? And like in anything, if you want an agent or you want a buyer, you have to think like a buyer. So if the agent says, "Oh, your property is worth 300,000 or 400,000," doesn't matter. Say, would you mind telling me why you think that? And they say, well, actually, I sold one down the road and had a little bit of a larger living room, but the decoration was a little better and it was closer to the station, and that was 390. But yours is, you know the arguments. Prove it. If you prove it, because you're only putting yourself in the shoes of the buyer.
Yes.
Because if you don't put yourself in the shoes, this is what a buyer's going to do.
But you find a lot of estate agents don't do that.
Don't do it.
But that's such a common sense thing to do, though, isn't it? So what's the 3 most common questions a vendor, a seller, should be saying to an estate agent? You know, if they're talking about looking to instruct them, you know, to actually think, well, I've got a good gut feeling about you, Jeremy. You said the right things, you know, rather than going to ABC sales or whatever. What question should, as a seller, I should be asking an agent before I instruct them?
How long you got? Well, I think it's proving the price and proving their worth, what they're doing. And I think what's very important and something which is also often missed is how long is the agreement? Because if it doesn't work out, then, to be able to get out of the agreement, if they say, oh, well, yeah, you have to write to our head office and a month later we will do it. I mean, that's not going to help anyone, but I've seen them. Or 2 weeks. You know, you've lost that continuity. How are you going to deal with buyers who've been introduced to you in the period of the agency? So it's just as much getting into the agreement as getting out of the agreement. And even if we might be nice, professional, reliable estate agents, we can't sell everything. So we have to play a good game, and we have to say, you know, this is why we think it's this price. We are going to give it 3-4 weeks. This is where we're going to market it. This is how it's going to be presented. And you yourself, I think, if you can, I mean, obviously, if you live abroad or you're not able to, you know, assess what it's there, put yourself in the shoes. Well, are you really going to say? And you look at the photography and so on. So it's not just about the price and the commission; it's the whole package of what you're getting.
Yeah,
that's what differentiates.
Yeah, and there's an argument that do I go with you as a sole agency, give it to you for 4 weeks before I go multi-agency, and then open it up to other agents?
I think that's changed actually.
Right, okay.
I'll tell you why. Because several years ago, the portals now are everything. Unfortunately, they are abusing their almost monopoly position.
And they cost a lot of money, don't they?
I can't tell you how much it costs.
How many portals are you on?
We're on actually one of the few agents who are on all three, the major ones. We're on Rightmove, Zoopla, and on the market. We get a little bit from all three, but for instance, Rightmove's fees are, I think now we pay about 70,000. And we were paying about, 22 or 23 only a few years ago. I mean, for all the agents, they've absolutely rocked us in terms of the costs, and it's very difficult. In fact, once I tell you, a few years ago, I was abroad, and there was a problem because a number hadn't been keyed in properly, and we went off for about a couple of days. Right. And I was getting calls from the office. Oh, the inquiries have dried up. You know, what's happened, Jeremy? You know, sort it out. And you know,
so reliant on the portals.
You're reliant on the portals.
Isn't it? I read with regard to lettings. I can't say about sales, but everyone goes in the portals. It's just a given now. Yeah. I think 92% of lettings are done through portals.
Yeah.
You know, and I think also it's such a major marketing cost for agents now. I think it has an effect with other marketing that they can't do.
Oh, it's got to stand out on the portals. Yeah, and particularly with flats. You were touching on before about. There's a lot more flats in the area, but every area is different. If you've got a country cottage in the middle of nowhere, and it's got 3 acres around it, and I don't know, horse boxes or whatever, then of course that's more likely to stand out. In terms of course, its price is important, but the presentation is very important. Yeah, particularly when there's plenty of competition, you've really got to differentiate yourself.
Yeah. And how just wrapping up now towards the end. It's been a great interview, Joan. I really appreciate you coming in. On mortgage applications, how are you seeing that? I mean, has it got quicker? Has it got slower? Is there much stronger stress testing? How are you seeing that with regard to applications? Is it slowing up the sales process?
It's better than it was.
Right.
I mean, partly because transaction numbers are down, and part of the whole ethos, if you like, of the business's other changes, transactions are taking longer. So when they were shorter, the lending process was much more critical. It's not quite as critical as it was because people are taking longer to make up their minds. We're finding at the moment, and it can change, that the lenders are not too bad and the surveyors are not too bad.
But the solicitors?
Solicitors are always a problem, nearly always. You know, the good ones are even further and farther between.
Really?
A lot of people trying to save money go to white label companies.
And they automate it. And
they automate it, and it's fine if it's a brand new flat and everyone else has bought it, no problem. But if it's something a little bit of an issue, almost certainly, a bit like estate agents, if there's a problem arises, that's when the issues
and it can be really stressful.
Yeah, because we know the way we buy and sell property, unfortunately you have to pay a lot of money usually, and if people change their mind, there's not any recompense. I mean, the government have looked at trying to improve
Gazumping, you're talking about.
Gazumping, gesundering, having upfront information. There's a lot of those things.
Brilliant. Last question. So we see on Netflix and we see on Sky all these estate agents selling all these multi-million pound houses, and it's all really glam. It's a bit like Love Island to a certain. It's like, you know, it's all like that. Do you think that those programs help your industry?
A good one. I
thought I'd throw you on the spot.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
I don't think it's such a bad thing because it's all about marketing. It's selling the dream, whether it's a studio flat or a one-bedroom flat, or it's a massive mansion that someone is trying. You've got to sell the dream. You've got to buy into it. You've got to market yourself properly. What we said before about trust, about standing out for the crowd. So there's lots of lessons we can learn from that.
So we can see you on Amazon shortly on a new series.
I doubt it.
Thank you for coming in.
Pleasure as always.
So look, really great advice from the man himself, Jeremy Leaf, on estate agency, on development, on how the planning is, on first-time buyers. It never stays the same. But you know what? He's giving you some great tips when it comes to finding the right estate agent.
Subscribe now to Talking Property.